Let's get to that. President Trump met with Canadian Prime Minister Mark Carney on Monday during the G7 summit. The two leaders reportedly committed to pursuing a trade deal within the next month. Prime Minister Mark Carney sending a clear and strong message to his country and to the White House as he prepares to lead his nation through a trade war that his country did not ask for.
Wants our land, our resources, our water, our country. Never. But these are not idle threats. President Trump is trying to break us so that America can own us. That will never ever happen.
It all began with a handshake in front of the cameras. President Donald Trump and Canadian Prime Minister Mark Carney standing side by side at the G7 summit, announcing their intention to negotiate a trade deal within a month. The moment was carefully choreographed, meant to signal cooperation and progress. But what followed was a diplomatic unraveling that few had anticipated. While Trump spoke optimistically about the future, governors in the northeastern United States were already preparing for economic fallout. The warning signs were everywhere, not just in government offices but in the real world. Empty hotels, vacant restaurants, shuttered storefronts, and highways once bustling with tens of thousands of Canadian tourists now eerily quiet. For Massachusetts Governor Maura Healey, the signs were impossible to ignore. She had seen enough.
I thought it was important to get a group of us together, so I invited Governor Hochul from New York, the other New England governors, to meet with Canadian premiers in Boston the other day to talk about how we can move forward with our own relationships, our own partnerships around trade, around energy supply, around tourism, for example.
When Trump jacked up tariffs on Canadian goods, slapping a hefty 25% on energy, lumber, and aluminum, Governor Healey didn't waste time. She didn't head to D.C. or call up diplomats. Nope. She summoned an emergency meeting right in Boston, bringing together the people who actually feel the sting of these decisions. Governors, Canadian premiers, and folks on the ground dealing with the fallout. But before we dive deeper, real quick, smash that like button to help us out with the YouTube algorithm and show some love for the channel. This meeting, it was something else. Picture this: governors from New England, New York, Vermont, Maine, New Hampshire, Connecticut, sitting around a table with Canadian provincial leaders. No cameras, no fancy speeches, just real talk. The big question on everyone's mind: how do we shield our communities when the federal government's pulling us into a trade war with Canada, our closest ally? Healey didn't mince words. Canada's our biggest trading partner, she said, her voice steady but firm. And yet, Trump's taxing our states like we're the bad guys. The numbers she laid out? Brutal. Massachusetts was already reeling from a 20 to 60% drop in Canadian tourism. And it's only June. Hotels were seeing cancellations pile up. Flights from Canada to Boston's Logan Airport were tanking, and even wealthy Canadian homeowners in Florida were packing up and leaving. Some of North America's biggest spending tourists were saying, "Nah, we're good," and taking their money elsewhere. This isn't just some abstract policy debate. It's hitting people where it hurts. It's personal, and it's gut-wrenching. Oh, and before we keep going, hit that subscribe button to support the channel and stay in the loop. This isn't just politics, Governor Healey said, her voice carrying the weight of the moment. This is about workers, families, small business owners getting crushed because Canadians are canceling trips, pulling out of their seasonal homes, and steering clear of our cities. Take Old Orchard Beach, Maine, a little town just 150 miles from the Canadian border. Sterling Moore, who runs the Point of View Inn, stood behind the counter, staring at an empty reservation book. For decades, French-Canadian families filled his place. Same folks, same weeks, same rooms. Not this year. "We're down 90%, Moore said, his voice heavy. "They're angry, and they're not coming." He pulled out a box of last year's registration cards, little Canadian flags scribbled on nearly every one. Then he held up this year's stack, barely a handful. "This doesn't pay the bills," he said softly. "This doesn't work." The reason? It's not hard to trace. Trump's been taking shots at Canada's leaders, calling Prime Minister Carney a glorified governor, joking about turning Canada into the 51st state, and claiming for years that Canadians have been ripping us off. For people like Gary and Carol Cruz, Canadian snowbirds who've spent 5 months a year in the U.S. for over a decade, it's more than just words. It's personal. "We love America," Gary said, his voice cracking a bit. "We've dropped over $30,000 a year on U.S. vacations. But this? It feels like a punch in the gut from your best friend." This year, the cruises canceled 2 Disney trips. Their RV, usually parked somewhere between Florida and Arizona by spring, is staying in Ontario. "We used to hunt for Made in the USA labels," Carol added. "Now if we see one, we put it back on the shelf." And they're not alone. State tourism boards in Florida, New York, California, and Illinois are scrambling, launching ad campaigns to win Canadians back. One California ad practically begs, "Please visit. We're not Trump." Another shows peaceful coastal towns with the tagline, "We're still your neighbors." But it's not working. Even if a destination feels welcoming, crossing the border means dealing with Trump's America. Passports, flags, questions. For many Canadians, that's enough to stay home. Back in Massachusetts, Healey's team was crunching the numbers, and it's grim. Trump's lumber tariffs have jacked up construction costs so much that affordable housing projects across the state are grinding to a halt. "We get almost all our lumber from Canada," Healey explained. "Now we're paying more to build fewer homes. The math just doesn't add up." Aluminum tariffs are hitting hard too, especially the craft beer industry, one of Massachusetts' biggest. "Every can uses Canadian aluminum," she said. "We're seeing layoffs, production slowdowns, good businesses getting punished for a trade war they didn't start." Then there's energy. Trump's tariffs on Canadian natural gas and electricity are set to hike heating and utility bills across New England by $2.5 billion over the next 5 years. That's not just a number, it's a tax on every family trying to keep the lights on and the house warm. This isn't just a policy, it's a tax on hard-working people. Governor Healey's voice trembled with conviction. And it wasn't just Democrats sounding the alarm. Republican governors from border states were witnessing the same heartbreak. Tourism drying up, energy bills spiking, housing projects frozen, and rural hospitals closing their doors. The damage was rolling in quicker than anyone could have imagined, like a storm nobody saw coming. In a Boston meeting that felt more like a family huddle than a political summit, Healey laid out a plan, a regional response to fight back. Governors from across the Northeast would team up with Canadian provinces directly. They'd forge energy partnerships, craft cross-border travel deals, explore new rail connections, and push for waivers on critical materials like lumber and aluminum. "If Trump can't work things out with Prime Minister Carney," she said, her eyes scanning the room, "then we will." But even the boldest plans couldn't undo the pain already hitting home. In Massachusetts, the hospitality industry was crumbling. Waitresses, bartenders, housekeepers, folks who pour their hearts into their work were facing slashed hours or pink slips. The ripple effect was staggering. Supply chains were snarled, beverage distributors were stuck with unsellable stock, and craft beer cans were piling up in warehouses, all tied to those punishing tariffs. For every politician holding a press conference, there were real people, families, losing their livelihoods. In Old Orchard Beach, Maine, the Chamber of Commerce laid it out plain. Canadian tourists account for 30 to 40% of yearly revenue for dozens of local shops, restaurants, and businesses. "This isn't just about tourism," the director said, her voice thick with worry. "It's food service, retail, real estate, even auto sales. It's the whole system." Yet Trump stayed quiet. No olive branch, no hint of stepping back, no effort to mend ties. Instead, governors were left to play diplomat, scrambling to protect their communities while the fallout deepened. In one of the strangest twists, Trump's only comment on the chaos was to mock European leaders, claiming they were begging for gas and boasting that his tariff war was winning. But the numbers told a different story. French President Emmanuel Macron, fresh off a trip to China, was already pivoting. He inked 18 new trade deals with Beijing, covering agriculture, aviation, infrastructure, and called for Europe to stand economically independent from the U.S. Economists across the Atlantic felt a chill. If France follows through, and if other European nations follow France, Trump's tariffs could spark more than a tourism slump. They could unravel America's trade dominance for years to come. But the people feeling it first aren't D.C. lobbyists. They're hotel owners in Maine, restaurant servers in Cape Cod, beer distributors in Vermont, tour guides in Montreal. They're snowbirds like Gary Cruz, who, with his wife Carol, has spent winters in the U.S. for decades. "We're not trying to start a fight," Gary said, his voice soft but firm. "We just don't want to be insulted. We don't want to be taxed like we're criminals. We just want to visit a country we used to call our second home." This year, they canceled every trip, their RV parked quietly in Ontario. At that Boston summit, one message rang louder than all the rest, from governors, from Canadian premiers, from everyday folks on both sides of the border. Enough is enough. The Northeast isn't waiting for Trump to fix this mess. They're building new bridges, real ones, like rail lines, and political ones, like partnerships with Canada. They're sending a clear signal. If Washington can't lead, the states will. Because in the silence left by tariffs, someone has to stand up for the people who are hurting. Got thoughts or questions? Drop them in the comments. I'd love to hear from you. If you enjoyed the video, don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications so you never miss an upload. Until next time, take care and stay curious. Thanks for watching.